wanna bet that I can get you back inside your head before the summer ends and spread a little love. Just for a little fun, I'll make you come back to me before the rise of every sun. Baby, it's meant to be, I know you got a man, but he don't understand. You're gonna be a heartbreaker, you're such a love taker. So just suck me in and you can toss me like a cigarette, 'cause I just wanna be a bad habit, yeah. Rhythm in our love, it's impressive, excessive. You can't make this stuff up. My chest beats, it's restless, wakes the neighbors up above. Yeah, baby, come and show me love. Baby, come and show me love, because you're gonna be a heartbreaker. You're such a love taker. So just suck me in and you can toss me like a cigarette, 'cause I just wanna be a bad habit, yeah.
Take a one-way ride, steal us away to find a place we can hide. It wouldn't take much to disappear for a night, just to give in to the need and leave it all behind.
'Cause I know that you know that I know that you want me. You told me, now show me, come blow me away. 'Cause I know that you know that I know that you want me. You told me, now show me, come blow me away. You're gonna be a heartbreaker, you're such a love taker. So just suck me in and you can toss me like a cigarette, 'cause I just wanna be a bad habit, yeah. You're gonna be a heartbreaker, you're such a love taker. So just suck me in and you can toss me like a cigarette, 'cause I just wanna be a bad habit, yeah. Suck me in and you can toss me like a cigarette, 'cause I just wanna be a bad habit, yeah.
All right, good morning, everybody. Welcome to Inside the Numbers with the People's Pundit. I'm your host, Rich Barris, People's Pundit, and with me today is George and Peter from the Gaggle. Welcome, George and Peter.
Welcome. Very nice to see you again, Richard.
Good to be back.
Let's swing into this, guys. Last time we were talking a lot about vaccine mandates, right? And we came out with our poll, and the mandate for the employer and schools was not looking good, but very different than other people's mandate questions. I can't help but to notice how pollsters talk to each other if they're on friendly terms, right? And I know the guys at Rasmussen, good guys, and they try to do, and that's really all any pollster can do, is the best job they can, right? And sometimes you're right, sometimes you're wrong. It's just the name of the game. I can't help but to notice how some of the questions they've been asking, they're getting results that finally support, back up, confirm what we've been doing. And the three of us have been talking about this for months over Biden's approval with COVID. And once his approval on COVID collapsed, gentlemen, it was over. And that is what I've been trying to tell people, because that is the only thing people supported him on. And I'm going to put this up real quick, all right, and get your thoughts on it. Here's the new, it's probably on their website by now, but I had it this morning. And do you approve or disapprove of President Biden's handling of the COVID-19 pandemic? They word it exactly how we word it, and they also offer the Likert scale from strongly approved to disapprove, like we do. Maybe that's why Suffolk came up with some weird numbers from Kamala, really, really low numbers. I see Peter with the magnifying glass, but I'll read it anyway, Peter. Only 27% strongly approve. Now 44% strongly disapprove, with another 11 somewhat disapproving, which gives his overall disapproval pretty much where we had it. And it has his overall approval pretty much where we had it. And that's not good for them. We got this Omicron? Am I saying that right? Omicron, right? We got this Omicron virus.
Oh my God. You could just call it oh my God virus.
The oh my God variant.
Oh, it's scare event. Scare event. Okay, it's a scare.
Well, that's like, Peter, like, this is my question. I guess I'll throw it to you first, Peter. this is going to just keep coming. That's what coronaviruses do. This was clearly showing that the concerns. There's another thing Rasmussen asked that we asked. Concerns over the safety and efficacy of the vaccine are they're rising. So, whether or not people have confidence or are concerned about, all of that is starting to get a little bit more negative. As we get more variants that are just forever going to keep coming, the vaccine's going to get more leaky. And it looks like with Omicron, it's very leaky. Meaning, what do I mean by leaky? It's, the vaccines don't prevent, never did, the transmission of COVID. They just argued that they would give them less symptoms. All right. Even though that's like the first time in history I've ever heard of one doing that. But anyway, that's their argument. That's their goal. Now with Omicron, it doesn't even look. I mean, it's a much weaker strand, so of the virus. That's what all the evidence is, at least early evidence, is showing. How is Biden, Peter? This is my question. How are Biden, Democrats, and others around the globe who want to look at Australia, who want to lock their communities down? How are they going to keep this up?
They can't. Okay, eventually. I mean, you're absolutely right. You can know all the reasons why Biden and his administration is unpopular, and it's at the end of the day, it's all about COVID. If that's what it is, we're going to destroy, get rid of. We're going to conquer it. We're going to get rid of it. You can't. That's against science. Okay. What we need to do is manage it. There are only two things you look at. I don't care what you call the variant or which number of the variant. It's all immaterial to me. You look at hospitalizations and death.
Yeah.
Okay. And if you see those going down, all the rest of it is noise. It's just noise. Okay.
Well, that's the thing, Peter. This started as a way to stop the overburdening of the healthcare system. Exactly. Nobody ever said, stop the spread. That came later. It was 15 days to slow the spread because they didn't want the virus to overwhelm not enough hospital beds, overwhelm the public health system, the infrastructure of public health. This is not an issue that's even good for them anymore. So, I mean, this is what we went over the last time when I was on your show. This is not an issue that they win 75-25 anymore. This is a single-digit lead for Democrats, and that's because, and I imagine that may flip soon, because the bottom line is people are starting to come to the realization you can't continue this forever. What do you think, George? What are your thoughts?
Well, I agree entirely, because the problem is that they sold the public a bill of goods. They said, okay, we have the masking, the distancing, the lockdowns, and then finally we're going to get the vaccines. And then life goes back to normal. And then this normality gets further and further away. If people have had 2 shots of the vaccine, they still have to sit there with these ridiculous masks. And now they're talking about everyone has to get a booster. And they're getting more and more threatening, even as the efficacy of these vaccines, is becoming more and more flimsy. And look at what's going on in Europe. I mean, now you've got this, the president of the European Commission, Ursula von der Leyen. She wants an EU-wide vaccine mandate, just as people are realizing that, hey, these vaccines aren't doing much good, and that we need to top up every few months. And she says, no, we got an EU-wide mandate. So this is a loser for any politician, as you get more and more fanatical. Just as the results are getting dimmer and dimmer.
Well, I think people are going to vote worse than you're going to see in the polls too. I do, guys. Look at Virginia. I think people are going to, and New Jersey even more. I think people are going to vote worse than what you see in the polls against this stuff. I really do, Peter.
Well, George is absolutely right. I mean, again, what we said the last time we convened here and we all agreed, I did everything they told me to do. Okay. I did it willingly and didn't question a whole lot because this is a first time in my life there's been a pandemic. But I posit to both of you and to our viewers here, there's something called the flu. Now, where I live in Russia, they give you an option to have a flu shot every autumn, and I don't take it. Okay, because I don't think it's necessary for me. When I get the flu, It's awful. It's awful for a few
Yeah.
days. Okay. And that
Yeah.
means I'm going to have a lot of, hot tea and water, and I'm going to watch Netflix or something, and I'm just going to get through it. Okay. Now, unless you're elderly and you have morbidities, then, that's a different question. I put them in a different category. And I think that has been dealt with here. So my point is, and the mistake that all of these leaders are making is that we have to learn to live with it. We manage the problem. We manage it.
Yeah.
Okay. There's no silver bullet
And
here.
yeah.
No one jab,
That's right.
and it's all going to go away. That's stupid, and it's against science.
And that's really the point, that when you get the flu, it is extremely unpleasant, but it's not lethal. I mean, and that's it. If you're thinking about serious illnesses, then it's very low down in the pecking order. It's not cancer, it's not kidney disease, it's not stroke, the things that kill you. It's just very unpleasant for a short while. Now, they do kill you if you're elderly and if you have, other illnesses. And, people do die of influenza every year. But that's, everybody dies of something. And particularly, if you're elderly, you're going to succumb to something or other. I mean, that's the way it is.
That's life.
But
that's life.
Yeah.
I mean, it may sound callous to say, but
yeah.
And let me ask you, because I said it before, but I'm serious. I don't know any other illness, even with flu shots. Sometimes they work, sometimes they don't. But I don't know any other vaccination that was ever sold this way to people, not just pushed. I mean, I'm talking about its efficacy, that it was so, because in the beginning it was not sold that it was going to weaken the symptoms. It was sold that it would stop it, and it was developed for alpha. That's just true. So, I don't know why there's so much pushback to this and this reaction, which I'm going to bring up the Good Morning Britain, their Twitter poll they put up. Should we impose mandates because of Omicron? And it was like, well, first of all, you don't know that the vaccine stops Omicron. So right off the jump, it's just assuming that that's true. And I got to say, from the beginning, there have been a few doctors who have been right about this, and they were muted by the media. But we had a lot of sources in vaccination teams in multiple companies. That's why we were jumped all over on some of this Pfizer news, had it before even the New York Times, some of this stuff, because we had good people that we spoke to that had direct knowledge of this stuff. And they tell me, this is what drives me nuts, because there's no way the media doesn't know this. They told me from the beginning and they told the president, the former president, this and his team, the reason why we don't develop coronaviruses is because it mutates. It will not be effective at subsequent strands, and can in fact even create a greater, speed up the creation of variants when you hit the population that's, using vaccine immunity at high rates. It's trying to live like anything else in nature. It's going to try to live. So it does what it does to change, adapt, and survive, which people like Robert Malone and what's his name? McCullough. I always forget his name. But they were right from the beginning about this. Now, this is what you can expect. And I don't understand, maybe because they're making money hands over fists, but Pfizer knows they told the president this. Why are they pretending now? Money. It really is that simple. And everyone follows along. But this was common knowledge. Can you think of any other vaccine that was sold like this to the public? Measles, mumps, rubella, all of this that we get now, that children are forced to get. It's to prevent the disease, not weaken it.
Well, and with all the ones you just mentioned, we've had a long history of that. And these were identified as we need to get rid of them. What did they do? With taxpayer money, the big pharma, they developed all these things. We paid for it, and they get all the profits. That's a different topic, but that's true, okay? But they had years. We had chicken pox and all this stuff from forever, okay? And then they finally said, hey, there's something called a vaccine. Let's develop it. And one by one they did it, okay? This is very different because, again, I took the vaccine. I trusted the authorities where I live. It was the right thing for me to do. But we didn't have a history of it. Okay. And then throw on top of it, for people like us that are more interested in the news, is that, like, where did this come from? Okay. Why are we dealing with this now? And that's a topic they don't want to talk about, which of course creates hesitancy and doubt. I mean, and both of you know the hesitancy and doubt in authorities these days is getting higher and higher and higher. So there's a cascade of issues that are colliding here. Okay, but a vaccine is, like I've said before, it's one of the greatest human inventions of all time. Okay, yeah. It's just that when
but the thing is
bureaucrats, George, let me finish. When bureaucrats take it over, that's different.
Yeah, but that's the thing. I mean, what a vaccine does is what the natural immunity system does. I mean, what is a vaccine? They give you a small dose of the disease, you build up an immunity system, and you never get it again. I mean, that's all it is. I mean, a vaccine, they basically do it, extract, tiny percent. But here, it isn't happening, and so it is bizarre for them. But you still have, because you've already built up the natural immunities. You must already have the antibodies. Big pharma has been given a complete immunity. So anything that happens, any untoward things that happen to people, they're obviously pushing it, and the governments are pushing it. So no wonder people are getting hesitant. Hey, I'm supposed to keep doing this every few months, and big pharma doesn't have any liability, and then we're finding out about these side effects. I mean, I mean, all these, we talked about this before, with these young, very strong athletes succumbing to, all of a sudden, gee, it's a heart attack. Well, of course, 28-year-old athletes,
I can put that up right now. Yeah. These are, and as you're saying that, I'm putting it up by age. Now, again, this is months of us finding this. Nobody wants to talk about it. And the fact, and what this shows is that, of course, if you're a higher risk, you're older from COVID-19, you are reporting less severe adverse events, which is great, because that's the at-risk population. But if you're younger, you are reporting levels that, folks, is way beyond anything the FDA has ever, I mean, this is just a registered voter survey too. Imagine if we did an all adult sample. Look, the younger you are, the more severe you report adverse events, which is important to what George was saying, because there was a few ways that this thing was rolled out that is contrary to not only how we've done it in the past, but what we're legally allowed to see. So when it had emergency use authorization, it still was not marketable. You could not market. It's illegal to market a vaccine that doesn't have full FDA approval. And yet everybody, Walgreens, CVS, McDonald's, every news outlet, who, by the way, this is why the media model is broken, because they get so much money from big pharma. It's ridiculous. So they make money over these advertisers. And, that's just how they stay in business. It's not from, paywalls or anything like sponsorship. And they're not going to talk negatively about a product that one of their sponsors is paying for. I mean, this is crazy, guys. And not to mention, I mean, legally, they were not allowed to do that. And they did it and basically said, well, it's not a commercial. I mean, come on, Peter, right? I mean, it is what it was. They were marketing the vaccine.
Okay, but I mean, I don't know. I think all three of us have noticed that when you watch cable news, obviously I don't watch much of CNN and MSNBC, but cable news is directed to a certain demographic. It's boomers, and look at all of the commercials. It's Big Pharma hour, every single program. It's Big Pharma. Do you think these cable networks are going to push too hard? Okay, I don't think so. I mean, they want to keep it very monoculture when it comes to that. I mean, they're the ones that are paying for the ads. Okay, so I mean, I think a lot of people notice that. Okay, I mean, every single thing you can imagine that's wrong with you, they're advertising to you over and over and again. And of course,
you have big nose disease. We have a pill for you.
Particularly particularly when these when they have these like public shareholding meetings of these big companies. I mean, they say all you have to do is listen, and they talk about
Yeah.
profit margins and this booster is going to do this and all. I mean, come on, you guys. I mean, this is not public health. Okay, this is business.
Well, Peter, that is the thing. If you were following along, Pfizer was first. But if you were following along, what they submitted to the FDA did not suggest that it would weaken the symptoms of COVID. That is not what they were selling it to the FDA for. They were marketing it as a way to prevent alpha. That's it. I mean, and that's what, and because we didn't have a conversation about variants and the nature of coronaviruses, which is why we've never had a vaccination for one, they knew all that. It doesn't say, that they're intending to develop this thing for later variants. It doesn't say that. And everyone on Twitter is like, well, it's not supposed to stop it. It's supposed to, lessen the severity of the disease. Why didn't they submit that to the FDA? That is not what it says. I mean, it just drives me nuts. And people bite this stuff and they eat it hook, line, and sinker.
Yeah, no, that's a very good point. That's not how it was sold. It was sold, you get the vaccine, and then you're immune. That's it. You can get on your life, and then no one can.
We can go back to normal.
That's it. That's exactly what it is. And now it turns out that you can not only get it again, but you can infect others with it. And so you've achieved nothing very much. But let me ask now, Richard, what can be done about this? I mean, because we're into this cycle. All the politicians, they're all committed into this cycle, whether it's in the United States or whether it's in Europe. Yeah. How do we break out of it? I mean, is it just sort of millions of people out in the streets and say enough is enough? Because otherwise, it's just going to go on and on like this. I mean, there just seems to be no to it.
There has to be a tipping point, George.
Is it going to go on until November 2022 or November 2024? I guess that's
right. I think eventually there's going to be a tipping point. I think there already is are signs, dating back even months. So Pennsylvania, they had a special election. Nobody was really paying attention, but it was a referendum vote, and Republicans voted in outsized shares of the electorate. But I would argue that's the way Pennsylvania is probably going to be going forward, because on paper, it still looks like a Democratic leaning state, D plus whatever, but it's not. When you infer and you ask people, they'll tell, lots of Democrats and independents will tell you they're Republican. They just didn't change their registration. But they had this election. Governor Wolf, he had his powers basically stripped from him, his emergency powers. Nobody paid attention to that. It really wasn't even that close. 4 to 5 points in the state of Pennsylvania is not that close. And then when you look at where this late absentee ballot vote arrived that everyone thought was going to help him, it came from the southeastern part of the state, where Schumer made his infamous comment, for every working, Western Pennsylvanian voter we lose, we gain 3 in Delaware County or whatever. That did not happen for them over there. So even those people are fed up. Right? This was a very anti-Trump area of the state. And then we saw going forward, Virginia and New Jersey took the spotlight, but there were elections in Pennsylvania over there, and you could see very large swings away from Democrats. I think there are already signs there, but if you're Biden and you have issues like this, what else do you have to run on, guys? I mean, what else could you do? And that's what I was trying to show. That's basically a mirrored image of what Rasmussen found if you combine strongly with somewhat on both approve and disapprove. Rasmussen's 55 disapprove on COVID, 44 approve. We're 43.4 to 54.2. I mean, that is, guys, everybody busted our chops, when we released this. And we're like, that's a fake pollster, that's a Trump pollster, blah, blah, blah. I mean, it's so ridiculous. I'm like, guys, whatever. We had him at 60% 6 months ago with COVID. Don't pretend like we ever were off base here. We led this trend. We showed people this would happen. I mean, if they want to continue to believe YouGov, that he's still +1 on COVID, knock yourself out, because he is unbelievably underwater, and that is going to impact down ballot. So at some point, maybe a shellacking, George, is the answer to that question. And it's like they'll feel like they can't take that gamble with the White House 2 years later. if they get crushed next November.
Richard, when you talked about the election in Pennsylvania and attitudes towards the corona response, was it because of mandates, because of schools? What was driving that?
I think, people don't, and still we find that a lot of people don't really mind wearing masks. They don't want to be forced to, and they don't want their children to be forced to wear masks. So that definitely plays a role. But school closures for parents were brutal. And then for the rest of it, I mean, it's survival, right? And it's really about survival, their job, their business, if they're a small business owner. And now, Peter, what we're seeing is the impact on the economy from not just, Trump shut it down, then we reopened and things started to bounce back. This is this like forever threat looming over them that they're, if there's one too many cases, some arbitrary standard has been reached, then the curtain comes down again and we lock up. They're afraid of it. They're done with this, and they know the governor has the power to do that, like with the stroke of a pen. So in North Carolina, Governor Cooper, he gambled with the budget again, trying to expand Medicaid, under Obamacare, because North Carolina, like Florida, did not do it. The budget was like almost about a year late. I mean, it's ridiculous, malpractice. He was basically derelict of his duty, but he was trying to play a political game. He gambled and he lost. And in the budget deal that they finally passed about a month ago, he was forced to write out his own emergency powers. So it didn't even go to a vote, guys, because the Republicans put it in there, and he was forced to do it. And by the way, they also agreed on the redistricting plan, the map. They had generally figured out how they were going to redistrict in North Carolina. So Cooper signed off on that, and so did Senate Democrats. And now they're suing over the map for redistrict. It's unbelievable. So they took a gamble, they lost. They played the game wrong, and now they're just going to go to the judge anyway. I said this on a local stream yesterday, Peter. I said they remind me of like the kids on the block who, maybe they would bring their wiffle ball bat. They always got like 5 strikes because it was their ball. And if you made them, strike out on strike 3, they'd cry, take a tantrum, and run home with their ball and go tell their mom and dad that, you're mean and you pitched too hard. That's how Democrats are. They lose. They put up this big fuss. They lose, and then they run to a judge to try to make it better, like their mommy and daddy or something. It's right. Like this pathetic syndrome. It's childishness.
But that's the way the Democrats play it. I mean, whenever they're doing redistricting, the media always happily reported, redistricting. When the Republicans do it, it's known as gerrymandering. Right. Republicans are gerrymandering.
Right.
It's always, it's great when Dems do it, but hey, that's gerrymandering. So yeah, but you're absolutely right. So you remember that with 2016. I mean, the Democrats kicked up such a fuss over Trump's victory. I mean, this went on through the whole of the Trump term. They're still crying about 2016, and incidentally, they're still crying about this. And if anything goes wrong for the Democrats in 2022, boom, it'll be again, Putin intervened and stole this election. I mean, it's there, ready to go. The whole story that Putin is interfering in our election. I mean, that's the way the Democrats play it.
Yeah, but it's like Stacey Abrams. I never said that. You remember that? She said, I never contested the election. No, of course not. Okay, so say it with a straight face.
With a straight face, Peter. Straight face. She claims she never said Brian Kemp stole the election from her. This is it's just incredible. It's like Twilight Zone. When you think about it, it's Twilight Zone. You can't imagine that anybody would ever delude themselves that badly, and they do it, or they're that dishonest. It's funny you brought up Russia, because after we pivot a little bit, I'm going to ask you guys about this. Everyone's having a canary. The new Ronald Reagan survey for the first time ever has, China as the greatest threat among what people think. We have been asking people this for a long time. And our public polling project just asked probably about 4 months ago, maybe 4 or 6 months ago, China was going away number one on everybody's. It was like 45 to 22. And right with Russia being 22 because of the media lying to Democrats for 4 years about the threat Russia posed, because that was their straw man. That was their boogeyman, actually. Putin was their boogeyman. And we weren't paying any attention to the threat that China posed, because Trump was, that was his platform. That America first, man. The Chinese are taking over. That was Trump, right? So they didn't want to talk about that. Now, Brett Baier and Fox News, that's their favorite damn topic. This survey came out. That's all Brett wants to talk about. Brett, you helped China, Brett, by booting the one guy who tried to stop their rise. You took the one man standing between Chinese dominance and the American people. You took that guy. You helped take that guy out. He's gone now, so don't complain to anybody else about the rise of China. And there are all these stories in the Wall Street Journal. We got Britt Hume tweeting about it the other day. We need a hypersonic weapons capability. We're falling behind. Who's in that story? It sure as hell isn't Russia. It's China. So, guys, did they not think about the time? And I guess this is what I want your thoughts on. I'll go back. But now that, George, you brought it up, so I'm going to ask you, because I wanted to ask you this anyway. 4 years, George, they wasted an actual opportunity for America to pivot and do something that could stop, you can't really stop the rise of a superpower, but you can stop its influence over you, or at least a large, percentage of that. Forget about King Street. I'm talking about precious rare metals.
Richard, it could have been bipartisan. It could have been
bipartisan. Good, Peter. Good. I want to hear your thoughts on that.
Yeah,
because that drives me nuts.
That's right. The Democrats, in a very cynical way, they grabbed onto Russia. They did this in the 2016 election, and then they just ran with it throughout Trump's term. They really didn't care very much. I mean, ultimately, the Democrats don't care that much about the fate of the country. They just want to be in power, and they're ready, really, to see any issue. Just like now, they've seized on the whole issue of white supremacists are the most dire threat America faces. I mean, it's just nonsense, but it keeps them in Russia. But it was always obvious that China is, this enormous rising power. Its economy, is likely to surpass that of the United States in no time. And then even when the COVID thing, and that's a very serious matter, that's the origin of this virus. Even then, the Democrats didn't want to touch it because they wanted to blame Trump for COVID. No, let's just focus on Trump. So that Trump is responsible for COVID. And so any attempt to try to get to the bottom of it as to where the hell did this virus come from and whether it was artificial was just simply stamped on by the Democrats and, of course, their media allies. No. Let's just focus on how terrible Trump is.
Yeah, Peter, the opportunity, like you said, the opportunity that was squandered to make things in America that need to be made, that are critical, they're vital to national security. It was a perfect opportunity to show the people, this is why we need this made here. Look, the Chinese could deprive us. Look what can happen to us during a pandemic, how much we could use PPE, whatever it may be. And it could have been bipartisan. But like George said, Peter, all they gave a damn about was blaming Donald Trump. I mean, what an incredible waste.
One of the most important things about Taiwan, I mean, I think it's a very complex issue. But I mean, one thing is eminently clear is that Taiwan, for reasons that should be explained and explored, has done very well with semiconductors. Why hasn't the United States done that? I mean, you use it for everything that's very important. So, it's just not worth us to build it here. Okay, our profits are not going to. No, I mean, this is insanity. Okay, I mean, people talk about national security. What about national economic security? This has been staring at this industry for years. And then all of a sudden, oh my goodness, we're falling behind. I mean, when it comes to other issues, I mean, George and I know this very well. The missile gap, of the early '60s, which is a complete
yeah. That's a great example.
It's a complete myth. Okay, that inflation, and then since Russia's been mentioned here, George and I, from Crosstalk all the way to the Gaggle, to your venue, we've fretted about how Russiagate, the hoax, would bleed into policy. Well, it has, because look at the mess that the Biden administration has found itself vis-a-vis Ukraine. I mean, they have boxed themselves into a ridiculous corner that never should have happened in the first place, and they have no way out. They have no way out. They have given away all the high cards, and so the only thing you can do is reassess and then eat crow or go to war. What kind of world leader of a major country puts themselves in a position of retreat or war? I mean, a great leader, the great leaders always have a whole menu of things that they can do. These boneheads have just painted us into a catastrophic corner. And it never should have been that way. The way the media characterizes it, this is not a conflict between Ukraine and Russia. It's not. It's an internal Ukrainian conflict that the U.S. constantly is using that as a cudgel against Russia. I'll tell you, the Tony Blinkens and the Victoria Nulands, they don't give a hoot about Ukraine. They can starve in the winter. They don't care. As long as they get the photo op to say, see what the Russians did, okay? This is the media coverage of it, with the exception of Tucker Carlson last night, which was astounding for American television. Astounding.
Yeah.
It was very well done.
It was just an amazing, also just apropos of what Tucker Carlson did, which is that he went against the entire Fox News coverage. I mean,
that's right.
All day on Fox News, you had the drumbeat of all these ridiculous stories. Is Putin going to invade tonight, or is he going to wait till the weekend? All this hysteria, and he kind of, he just blew that out of the water. And what Peter's saying is absolutely right. That why the Biden administration have got themselves boxed in. They came in with this very hostile attitude toward Russia, and for some reason, they presented the thesis that somehow Ukraine is a vital national interest for the United States. Complete nonsense. Fiction. Ukraine is not a member of NATO. There's no military alliance between the United States and Ukraine. Just the day before yesterday, was run by Viktor Yanukovych, who the Americans didn't like. So suddenly Ukraine is a vital ally. Now you've got yourself boxed in, because Ukraine is much more important to Russia than it is to the United States, and yet the United States in public says, "Oh no, it's really
incredible.
It's a vital national interest for us." I mean, this is a conflict the United States cannot win.
No.
And if you back up and remember the 2.0, really Russia 2.0, which they used to impeach Donald Trump over Ukraine. Do you remember the witnesses they drug up? These are all these people, this circle, this group that, meddles, which, by the way, even the Ukrainians can't stand the embassy in Kiev. They feel like they're constantly meddling in their own affairs. And if for the people who didn't see that, I just put it up from the Columbia Bugle. If they had like a short snippet, then I would have played it right now, because it's fantastic what George and Peter are talking about with Tucker. That is very rare, what Tucker did last night, to have him come up. And it's up there. There's the link right there. I tweeted it in the comment section after the show, not now. Check it out. But basically, his monologue called out the Biden administration and the bipartisan push by neocons, and I would call them like the neo left or whatever. I don't know how to phrase this group of people, but they always had more in common with neocons.
Liberal interventionist.
Yeah, that's the traditional term. That's probably still the right term, right? I mean, it's liberal interventionists. They believe, like, neocons are a little bit different. They feel like they can change the image of the world by using the primacy of U.S. power, where liberal interventionists are more like metal everywhere. It's not just about military. So I would say that's maybe what separates them a little.
There's a Republican version. There's a Democrat version. They've invented these terms to make sure they get cover from their parties. But I mean, if you go back to George and I think George, we talked about this yesterday. If you look at the impeachment,
you've been calling this, though. It's worth noting. You've been calling this on Ukraine. You've been calling it for months. You said this would happen. He would box us into this corner, and he did. It's
If
worth
you look
pointing
at-
that out to everybody.
If you look at the Ukraine impeachment thing, if you look at the entire panel, the Fiona Hills and the Vindmans and the guy that shamed bow ties, none of them are experts on Ukraine. They are what they are this democracy promotion brigade. Okay,
Yep.
these
Yep.
are nation builders. They don't give a hoot about building a nation in America. As a matter of fact, these same people want divisions in America, but they want to make sure that Ukraine has a safe border, not the American border, the Ukrainian border. Okay.
Yeah.
No, I think
And,
that's
you know,
right. And no,
go ahead, George.
just to add to what Peter said, they're also rabid Russophobes, and particularly when you look at Fiona Hill and that woman. What's her name? Carlin. I think she's in the DOJ now. She has some big job in the Department of Justice, and she was the one who said Ukraine is fighting the Russians over there in order that we don't have to fight Russia over here. I think that was.
Recycle the same crap.
Yeah,
they recycle the same.
And so for them, Ukraine is only of any interest if they can use it as a battering ram against Russia. I mean, it's a very cynical policy, but it was all directed at Russia. I mean, none of them knew anything at all about Ukraine or anything about that didn't really interest them. It was just how do we get at Russia? And what's her face? Newland was testifying yesterday before the Senate Foreign Relations Committee. Same nonsense. I mean, again, it's all about how do we hurt Russia as much as possible, and that's a dangerous position for America to get itself into. This is where you're going to put raise your flag and put up a fight. That's a fight you're going to lose, and then you've got no real other option except to escalate. And
I don't see what's right. What is the end game here? Are they stupid? First of all, you can't even beat Antifa. I wouldn't turn my sights to Vladimir Putin right now. All right, forget it. I mean, these people can't even topple basic real enemies, real problems. They haven't won a war in 40 years. I don't know what they're thinking. Like, they drive me crazy a little. Fiona Hill, speaking of Fiona Hill, we now know from the Durham probe, she lied under oath in that impeachment. Flat lied about her knowledge of that dossier and how it made its way through the Justice Department. So these are people that were star witnesses. Marie, and you guys know this, I'm sure, because one thing that drove me nuts during the impeachment trial was the depiction of Marie Yovanovitch as for people who don't know this woman, she is a cutthroat monster, okay? And to depict her as bullied by big bad monster Donald Trump is crazy. And you ask anybody in Kiev about this woman, and they will tell you, it's just, don't get on her bad side. She's a monster, folks. She's a monster. Might as well be a gangster.
And George and I have already talked about this, and I shamed the Republicans as well on this here.
Yeah, totally agree.
The simplest question you could have asked during the Ukraine impeachment is that somebody would have said, "Look, we've got your phone records at the time you were ambassador. So can you tell us how many hours you spent dealing with the Burisma issue and Hunter? Yep. Can you just kind of give us an estimate? Because I got the stack right here. I can tell you exactly, but maybe you could refresh your memory because I can do it for you." Nobody did that. Nobody asked. Cowards. The only question that really matters. She was the ambassador for the Biden family. Okay, that's what she was.
The website Creative Destruction Media that we poll for sometimes once in a while, that was started by a guy, Todd Wood, and he has been run through the mud and basically deplatformed over his reporting on this. He has a lot of source, a little bit too close to some of them for me, because some of that crowd, it's hard to tell good guys from bad guys. But I mean, he had pictures of Yovanovitch basically with Ukrainian gangsters trying to sell off old Soviet stuff. I mean, nobody wanted to touch this, and he's like, this is a bad woman. How could she be? Because I don't think he knew until he looked into it. He didn't realize how bad. And she was there to do business. She was not there to be a diplomat. And he got a lot, I mean, that was really the beginning of the end for him being depersoned. Because once he started to publish these pictures that, what's his name? Yuri Lutsenko. I mean, was just like, let me tell you about my time with Yovanovitch, and just sat down and gave Todd all of this information. Oh, yeah, you don't believe me? Here's some pictures, I mean, he was just giving it to them. No American media outlet was interested in this, guys.
What the American embassy did there was to adjudicate, not fight corruption, adjudicate corruption. Okay. I mean, George and I know Ukraine very, very well. And I remember in the origins of Russiagate, when we started realizing how many business deals and politicians, American politicians in Ukraine, I said, they have no idea what kind of snake pit they have gotten themselves into. Okay. Because it's more corrupt now than ever before. And that's an amazing statement to make. Why?
Zelensky didn't help with that.
There's an the U.S. and its allies are enabling corruption.
Right. That's exactly right. And that's why it was so interesting that the media were happy to play along with the nonsensical story that Yovanovitch presented of herself. Well, I was there and I was fighting corruption. That was my bailiwick, fight corruption. It was a tough fight. And the reason I was fired eventually by Trump was that I was just getting too close to the corruption. And I think, one of the Republican congressmen, I can't remember, maybe it was Jim Jordan, asked her, well, what was it? Can you name one case that you actually pushed the Ukrainian government to investigate? Well, I gotta let me think about that. She couldn't even name one. There was just one case where you said, "Oh, the government isn't doing very much. We need to investigate further." Nothing. It was a total fraud. And I remember Chris Wallace, after her testimony, said, "You can't be a human and not be moved to tears by her."
Yeah, Chris Wallace. And I heard that from the horse's mouth, that conversation over the prosecute lists, right? The target list that she asked Lushenko. He said that the media spun that as a lost in translation kind of thing, that he had explicitly stated that here she came in with a list and he said that is never what I said. The American media just said that I was talking about a physical list. It was very clear, and people can go to Creative Destruction and search it in their website. You'll hear it out of Lushenko's own mouth. She sat down and she said, "You will prosecute these people and you will not prosecute these people." And that's it. There was and he was like, "Oh, wow, this is what he felt like, he was in a bad spot." Now, look, nobody's perfect. Yutsenko isn't a great guy, but they first depicted Lushenko as the cleanup guy because they didn't want the prior prosecutor to be looked at as clean. So they brought in Lutsenko, and he'll tell you himself that he was never brought up as the cleanup. He was brought up to stop the investigations that were going on with his predecessor. He's not shy.
Why would a sitting vice president go to a foreign country and demand the firing of a prosecutor? I mean, really? I've never heard of anything like it. Okay, and I remember.
Go ahead. No.
Go ahead. No, you go ahead. You go ahead.
I just finish up just to add to that. The Burisma investigation was closed. Biden achieved what he wanted to achieve, which is the closing of the Burisma in early 2017. So Biden achieved what he wanted. He wanted to get this Viktor Shokin out. He wanted to close down the Burisma investigation, just as Shokin alleged.
Yep. And it happened. And he got it. And the idea, could you, if the roles were reversed, and that was, that was Trump or Mike Pence, if it's a vice president, they'd have burned him at the stake for it. It was, and on camera, he goes to the Council of Foreign Relations and he explicitly tells the Council of Foreign Relations what he did, which, by the way, for those who are wondering whether or not Biden was capable of that, the transcript, and I don't like personally, I don't like when a president's transcripts with other leaders are released. They have to feel that they can talk in confidence with other world leaders. I know that doesn't sound good, but anyone who knows anything about foreign policy and national security, international relations, you can't have the president feel like if he says something, or the other leader, feel like if they say something that could be used against them, the Washington Post may print it like they did with both Biden and Trump. But when Afghanistan was going on, Biden basically extorted the former president of Afghanistan in the same manner. So this is, and he did it with ease. So this is something this guy does all the time, apparently, and has been doing all the time.
Richard, George and I have talked about this many times. These kind of conversations that world leaders have, you could put it under one and only one rubric. It's all quid pro quo. So for me, it was hilarious.
All of it's quid
pro quo. What do you mean? Everything is quid pro quo.
Right. That was the most ridiculous thing on its page, Peter. It's a quid pro quo.
Everything.
Foreign policy is a quid pro quo. What are you talking about? It's ridiculous.
That's right.
And by the way, I just want to bring up
Trump.
Trump had,
just to add to that, Trump had every reason to go to Zelensky and say, we need to find out what the Biden family was doing in Ukraine. I mean, this is a matter of public interest for all Americans. What the hell were they up to in all those years? So the idea, he just wanted dirt on Biden. No, I mean, it's something Americans should know about, which is, what the hell were they doing there? I mean, they were basically leaving the country blind.
As if running for president of the United States somehow, exempts you from being the target of a corruption investigation. If that was true, then we would have never have had Crossfire Hurricane, against Donald Trump and his people surrounding Donald Trump. That's ludicrous to believe that. And the same standard would not apply to Joe Biden, who suggested in the White House meeting to use the Logan Act as a predicate, as a pretext. So what was Joe Biden doing? I mean, this is it was all so ridiculous. It really was. But they bite that stuff and people believe, some people want to be lied to. They hated Trump so much, they just wanted to be lied to.
Well, considering some of the origins of the Russiagate hoax are in Ukraine. I mean, these are legitimate questions to ask. I mean, if you're being falsely smeared over and over again by everything that the your opposition and the establishment and the media can throw at you, you have every right to stand up and defend yourself. Well, I mean, who are these people? I mean, as George and I have said, I think I'm one of the first. I might be the person that invented it. I'm not sure, but there were hardly any Russians in Russiagate. Okay, but the Biden family was in Russiagate. Okay, and the
Clintons.
There's
Hillary
nothing
Clinton
wrong
and her team.
There's nothing wrong to look at the origins of these things, particularly that a lot of aid, if not all of the aid that has been promised to Ukraine is at least there's a pro forma expression of fighting corruption. So Donald Trump was perfectly within his purview. I mean, look, we got the purse strings, and you're supposed to do X, Y, and Z. Are you doing it? Okay, and all of that panel during the Ukraine impeachment, they aided and abetted corruption. They didn't fight it.
They did. Right. And the role of Rudy Giuliani was also something else that they really twisted in. You have to intentionally twist the context of it in order to paint Rudy Giuliani in the way they were trying to paint him. So his client, the president, is being smeared with this information. We know a lot of it did originate from Ukraine. He's still within Trump, even if Trump suggested to Vladimir Zelensky that he wanted him to meet with Rudy Giuliani, it still would have been appropriate because he was his lawyer and he was trying to defend him. But that's not even what happened. Zelensky said, I'd like to meet with Giuliani. And if you're Trump, it's like, well, okay. He didn't bring it up. The New York Times took 500 words out of that transcript. We counted 500 words to make it say what they wanted it to say. And MSNBC, they clipped it. CNN, they clipped it, and they showed everything the New York Times edited on their screens all night, every night throughout the course of that crap. It was just it was an unbelievable twist. I did just want to bring up before we pivot off of this though, because all of these people, like I think it was George who said before, these are all nation builders. They're all like the democratic peace theorists, right? And that's what makes them a little bit different from neocons and how they do it. But generally, they all believe in the general thesis that if all countries were like us in the system of government, there would be less war. That's a thesis that is junk. And Bruce Russett couldn't defend it when he went to get his master's degree. It turned into a book, but he couldn't. The panel destroyed him, and he was left with twisting the interpretation of what counted as a war and what didn't, right? So it had to have these kinds of weapons and these kinds of vehicles. It was ludicrous. It was like Johnson calling Vietnam a police action, right? So I mean, this is the way you had to twist the words to get it. And there's a joke, or at least there was in my academic career, but it was a joke. If you can't defend your thesis like Bruce Russett, that's all right. Just go work at the State Department and push it there. Everybody will believe you. I mean, it's a total, because realism dominates the world of foreign policy and academia, because they deal with really central facts where everybody else deals in speculations and, utopias and, hold our hands, sing kumbaya, and international norms and, things that just don't really exist in the real world. But anyway, yeah, I mean, they believe in something that's garbage.
But that's the thing. What we've got with the Biden administration is a reversion to the heyday of the Cold War. We have an ideological mobilization. I mean, this democracy summit that's going to open tomorrow. So again, with the United States leading some sort of a global coalition against the dictators. And then you've got, at the same time, you have some kind of a military mobilization. Somehow Russia is going to unleash its hordes on Europe. Today Kiev, tomorrow Berlin. I mean, it's kind of a fantasy world that we sort of, as if we're living in the early 1950s. I mean, at least back then you could say, okay, well, the Soviet Union led an ideological movement, and that they were presenting an alternative model, so we have to present an alternative model. But neither Russia nor China are presenting an alternative model. They're not ideological. They have no interest in spreading their form of government. They're counterpunchers. If you hit them, they're going to hit you back and criticize your form of government, but they don't initiate it. They just don't like being criticized. The Americans, but they're essentially counterpunchers. They're not ideological powers.
Well, I mean, I'm glad you brought it up, George, because this democracy summit it's misnamed. It should be called the neoliberalism summit. Okay, and if you get out of line, George is in Hungary. Hungary is not invited there, though it is a member of the European Union and NATO. And to be a member of both clubs, you have to have a modicum of democracy. But no, see, this is the neoliberal project, and they're figuring out who's on their side and who's not. And then they mobilize against those that violate their secular neoliberal religion. Okay, this is what it's all about: dividing countries. You're either with us or against us. Okay, as 500 people languish in Washington, D.C. jails over the riot on January 6th.
That's what I was just going to bring up,
guys. It's almost 1 year. How many people are still rotting in prison? How many?
That's what I was just going to bring up. They're going to do this 2 days after Marjorie Taylor Greene, Representative Marjorie Taylor Greene, one of the few people who's been on this, just released a report detailing findings that I sadly knew now for months, the treatment in there, because Matt Brainerd had been holding these rallies, asked me to come to one. I felt strong about it. I went. And we were told back then what was happening to these people. Now, look, it's not just because they're right wing. I want to point out, too, or whatever they may be. That jail has been a dump, a cesspool of civil rights violations for years, which Marjorie Taylor Greene included in her report. If people haven't read it, they should check it out. It's not a big doozy of a read. It'll detail there's a cancer patient in there dying. Actually, I don't even know his status anymore. He can't get treatment. They're not allowed discovery with their lawyers to sit like normal defendants are allowed to sit down with their lawyers, request discovery in their case or whatever. What does the prosecutor got? They're not even allowed to meet with their attorneys half the time they ask to. I mean, so this is crazy. And they're going to hold this summit while they have hundreds of people suffering in these conditions. They're denied, hygiene routines, basic hygiene routines. They're beaten by the guards. The guards come in the middle of the night and will, kick them in their ribs while they sleep. This is outrageous. And you're the leader of a democracy. Get lost. All right. If, I hate to do it, but I got to bring it up. We shouldn't have even have had a January 6th because we should not have conducted an election in such a way that we did in 2020. That should never have happened because we should never have had such a disgraceful election. That's number one. And number two, if that was Russia who did what they did with all these mail-in ballots, forget about it. The State Department press releases would be flying. In fact, they just did it to Peru a little bit ago, right? So, this was, it is unconscionable that we wouldn't have the results of these ballots by 24 hours. Really? Are you nuts? Look in the mirror.
Right.
Well,
outrageous.
Richard, I mean, their favorite Russian dissident, he's a criminal, his name is Navalny. And so let's compare his prison conditions with the January 6th crowd that's so Navalny gets to go to a vending machine, go to the water cooler, and the torture that he has to undergo is watch old Soviet war films, which aren't actually that bad. Okay?
The worst things in the world are watching those.
I mean, it's interesting. He's in a gulag. No, he's not. This is publicly known information. Okay, he's a nonviolent criminal, and he's in with other nonviolent criminals doing his time. Well, I'm sure he has some kind of commissary privileges. He goes to a vending machine and has a chocolate bar, and then let's go watch a movie because there's nothing else to do. Okay, and then the January 6 people getting their ribs kicked in by their guards. Okay, right. Compare it. Okay, compare.
Right. And what other things?
And they're not allowed to receive stuff like candy bars from their family. They're not even allowed to see their family. Some of them haven't even communicated with their families in a very long time. First time one actually had seen, I think it was his sister, was because he was able to see her on the street. That was the first glimpse he got of her. And by the way, they shut that down. They shut down their ability to see their families, protesting them in the street. They moved them out, put them in a windowless room. I mean, this is insane. And I got to tell you, it is true. Minorities have been mistreated in that jail for years. And read Marjorie Taylor Greene's report, folks. It's not that long. And unlike some of the people Russia has put in that are violent and have caused, what you really could say is domestic terrorism, whether you like Putin or not. They're still treated better than the people who are in this prison or in this jail most of them are just nonviolent offenders. And that's the media's portrayal of them being violent offenders is a lie. You can see it in the database at lookaheadamerica.org. If you haven't looked at it, you can search for anyone, or you can look through every single record if you want. You will be hard pressed to find anybody who is charged with a violent crime.
Let us see the videos. Let us see the videos.
That's right.
Why?
That's right.
Show the videos.
That's right. And what's really important is that these judges sign off on prosecutors delaying things. The prosecutors just delay and delay and delay. So in fact, these trials are not going to take place until May or June 2022, if they happen then. So in other words, these people who are not violent will have been in prison for 18 months without having been convicted of anything. I mean, it's an average, and the judges just simply happily sign off on this. And you
have the so-called conservative National Review crowd cheering that guy getting all of that time for nothing, for nonviolent action. He was just the face of it. He was basically a trespasser. That's it. He got all of that time for trespassing. And I have to watch my mouth. Tools like David French, and Jonah Goldberg are like cheering it, as it should be. Yeah, okay, idiot, as it should be. Hard time for trespassing in the Capitol? Are you joking?
Right.
He got hard time.
Somebody who has no record, no criminal records. In other
No
words,
criminal
this is
record.
a first offense. It is, is absolute outrage. And the fact that they're not able to talk properly to their attorneys, and
Yes.
and it's just extra. And what the other day, Steve Bannon, his trial is going to be, I think, in July or something, July 2022 or something like that. And the Politico is in outrage. Oh, well, that's going to, we're not going to be able to get to the bottom of January the 6th because the Bannon trial isn't going to take place until July of next year. They never express any outrage over the fact that prosecutors repeatedly postpone the trial on January the 6th because they don't have a case. That's why they keep postponing it, because they still don't have any evidence against them. Oh, that's fine. There's no problem. Well, Steve Bannon, who's going to be, we're going to have to wait till July, and that prevents, the January 6th committee from doing its work. I mean, it's laughable.
That article quoted this idiot from Columbia University, Jennifer or something, I believe her name is, and she said of Bannon, and we were laughing about it. Steve and I were laughing about it. He's like, he's almost an anarchist. How do you almost be an anarchist? What kind of stupidity? And by the way, all you're doing is requesting material that is going to embarrass them, and that's why they're saying, oh, he's trying to basically turn the whole system upside down. You're requesting evidence. You're requesting what your persecutors have against you. That is supposed to be a central tenet of our system. And like what you said, George, before, like our founders would be horrified by the simple act of depriving someone from their counsel. That alone would be, like it's tea time. I mean, it's time to go throw some goods in the harbor. I mean, are you kidding?
They're going after Roger Stone again.
Yeah. It's on.
It shows that they have absolutely no case. I mean, they had a case, they would have presented it to us.
They would have brought it already.
I mean, look, the way, I mean, Washington is a sieve. It just leaks and leaks and leaks. If there was a magic bullet there, we would have known about it a long time ago. Okay,
yeah,
these people,
that is so true.
They have no moral fortitude whatsoever, okay? Because everybody wants to get one-upmanship. You want to break the story. The guy had dynamite, and he had who knows what. No, this is not there. And the Chewbacca guy. I should learn his name and give him more respect, okay? But you're right. He's the poster child. They love that picture of his. The picture of it, of his face and like that. That's what they love. They love that. They love that. I mean, from what I understand, the gentleman has some mental health issues. Okay, people that have in that state, they deserve our sympathy, not our scorn.
Yeah, and this comment that one of the viewers just said, they're playing a rather twisted game. They villainize them so much, and like George and Peter both said, there's no evidence to support it, but they need to deliver on pain and give their supporters blood. And while still pretending they're fair and tolerant. I don't know if anybody saw it, but if you don't know how badly these lies over January 6th twisted people up, you should listen to Marjorie Taylor Greene's voicemails, because this constant death threats this woman gets, whether you agree with her or disagree with her. Some woman, and I listened to a bunch of them, some woman said that it's not good enough for them to lose their reelection, that they need to be killed, drug out of into the streets of the Capitol and shot in the head. This is what this woman said. Their lives, because it's not good enough for them to just leave the Capitol. They need to be permanent. Their lives, and in quote, their lives need to be permanently snuffed out, they said. And then she ended it with, that's just how democracy works.
Right. Didn't
I'm like, Peter, I mean, at first I laughed too, but then it's like, holy crap. And there were many, many, many. And they were all talking about January 6th.
But Keith Olbermann said something very similar, I think, apropos of Trump and everybody else. I mean, he pretty much said William Barr and Amy Coney Barrett. I mean, he was sort of
throw them all in a basket.
Yeah, they should all be, I don't know, strung up on lampposts. And again, he's allowed to go on Twitter spewing real hatred. I mean, this is hatred, calling for violence against people, and nothing happens to him. But just to continue with what you were saying, is that January the 6th, yes, it should never have happened, because an election should not have been conducted in the way that it was. It was a joke of an election, as you said, Richard. And I think the courts, all of them, including the Supreme Court, dropped the ball. They basically didn't get themselves, didn't give Trump and Trump supporters their day in court. Everybody's entitled to a day in court, and they didn't get a day in court. And
Al Gore got his day in court. Stacey Abrams got her day in court. Andrew Gillum got his day in court. They all get their day in court except for Donald Trump. And eventually, someone has to vent somewhere, George. This stuff that they do, though, these lies, they are dangerous, because after she made those public, she said, I have to carry a gun. I need to be armed at all times and surrounded by security, because someone will do harm to me because of the media lies. She's not joking, and she's not exaggerating. Steve Scalise and 4 other people were shot because of a media lie, the Russia hoax. We grabbed that shooter's social media before Facebook deleted it. And I'm not going to name him, because I'm not going to give him any credit or any notoriety. But we knew who he was. We went because, Zuckerberg is real happy to remove a left-wing shooter's profile before anybody gets wind of what they were doing. And for months, it was this anti-Trump. The last one was, Trump is a traitor. Republicans enable him. And basically, somebody has to do something to stop this. A post before, because he believed fully, he had a change.org petition circulating and everything, that Trump was a traitor who colluded with Vladimir Putin, and that there was actually, like Rachel Maddow says, a Putin puppet in the White House. He really believed it. And one of the few things he had posted before he went and, to that, they were practicing for the annual charity congressional baseball game. And this sick, media perverted SOB opened fire on them. And also he went nuts. One of the posts he really went nuts over was Elizabeth Warren's floor speech he posted when Republicans were trying to repeal the Affordable Care Act. And Elizabeth Warren said that if Republicans are successful, millions of Americans will die. And he went nuts over it. He really, so now you've made them into these like Nazi Putin supporters who are going to kill millions of Americans. If you tell this to certain people, now they're no longer a criminal contemplating a mass shooting. They're a hero now, because if these people are so evil, then, I can't just sit around and let evil be evil. So I have to do something. They screwed this man up. And yeah, people can be sick and twisted, guys, but if he wasn't told those lies to begin with, all right, like if he wasn't really told.
This is an interesting topic, because there are people that believe, you just enumerated, the January 6th rioters, they should have their life snuffed out. Well, if that is a standard, then what about all the people that started these wars? They killed millions of people, made hundreds of millions, billions of dollars off of their interventionist wars, illegal wars. That the standard doesn't apply to them, apparently, does it? Because January 6th rioters didn't kill anyone. Okay,
let me just
kill tens of millions of people.
Donald Trump got 0 court cases held, and that is another fake media headline or fake media misinformation that just got put in the comment thing. He did not get 65 cases. He got 0 cases. Yes. Lawyers that were actually associated with the president and his campaign got 0 cases in court. You're referring to other people, peripheral people, and other organizations that the media has regurgitated to you. You are incorrect. Donald Trump and his campaign got 0 days in court, none. So just to let you all know that is I don't want anyone in the comment section to believe that lie. That is a Washington Post fabrication. It is not true.
And
Not
also
true.
the U.S. Supreme Court that, you know, just simply wrote one sentence dismissal as to why it wasn't taking the case, which was brought by 17 or 18 states, which never really explained it. But the U.S. Supreme Court took the case of Florida in 2000. So these states had no standing.
Which was the precedent.
Right.
Which was the precedent for the president's actual argument, or really one of his arguments,
Right.
which was that you treated absentee ballots differently than you treated any other ballot, which is true. The standard of verification was not the same with the mail-in vote. The requirements to get the vote in and counted was not the same.
Right.
Bush v. Gore says you can't do that. It violates the Equal Protection Clause. That was the point the entire time.
That's right.
So they took Bush v. Gore, but they didn't.
They didn't take it, and they didn't explain why did we take Bush v.
That's
Gore,
right.
but not this.
Well, George, I mean, if a state doesn't have standing in the Supreme Court, then who does have standing? That is the whole point. The whole point of the court is to recognize the standing of states. That's why we have it. States have arguments. Most of what they talk about is commerce and taxes and stuff like that. But the states have standing. And you can't just say, well, we're not going to listen because you don't have standing. By definition, you do have standing. Okay?
Yeah, that's right.
All of these cases could have gone south, but we don't know that. We don't. We'll never know.
No. And
that has always been my issue. My issue is I'm not going to say it was a thrown election. You need to prove to me that it wasn't. That's all I'm saying. I think that's a fair thing to ask.
Yeah, and that's why the people on January the 6th were so frustrated. That basically, you know, they all of these complaints, no one has, there's no redress of grievances. So I think that's why they came there, essentially to express their frustration. The fact that we have questions and the courts just simply don't want to address it. And then the Supreme Court, the highest court in the land, just says, hey, well, it's, even though it's in the Constitution, I mean, if there's anything very explicit in the Constitution, it's about elections. There's a great deal about elections in the U.S. Constitution.
There is.
And about conflicts between states. And that's when that's where the U.S. Supreme Court has original jurisdiction. Nothing in the Constitution about abortion, nothing there about gay marriage, but there's a great deal about elections, and there's a great deal about conflicts among states.
Yeah, George, I think you just said something that really is, it's profound. This is the point. If you have the system repeatedly address the grievances of one side, but ignore the grievances of another, that is what people like myself and others, and you just brought it up. This is so dang important. Eventually, there is really going to be a big problem because one side is going to come to the conclusion, this doesn't work for us anymore. And that in the history of civilizations is when violence really does erupt. Not fake violence, not false flags. I mean real civil unrest, which sadly, 2/3 of the American public told us they believe is like basically going to happen. There's nothing. 2/3. That's sad. That is something is broken if you get a super majority of voters in the country to tell you that it is more likely than not that we're going to head towards a second civil war. And we also asked whether or not there, could be a peaceful resolution. They don't believe there will be, that the system is basically just too broken. And sadly, there is a minority on both sides, but it's still a significant amount of people. It's like 30% who don't want a peaceful resolution. Right. We asked them that, and they would rather just bang it out right now, which is, I just couldn't believe those results. I'm like, this is fundamentally a failure of government.
What
the government has failed.
You can't hide the fact that, average people, when they look at January 6th and they look at the crime wave that is going across the country, I mean, there are people that went there, maybe some of them wrong-headed. I don't know. Okay. But there were some really bad actors. We don't know who all the bad actors are. We've seen some of them on video. They don't seem to be, the FBI doesn't seem to be knocking on their door. But then, you have people that didn't do anything violent at all. the vast majority of them. And then you have a crime spree where prosecutors don't prosecute. See, this is what the people, this is what people get really upset about, because they see, I have the right to protest. I have a right to go to the people's house. They should have done it legally. They should have worked with the authorities, of course. But then, you know, you can't even go to a shopping mall right now because a gang of people are going to come in and rob the place, and nothing will happen to them. They videotape all those people, but why aren't they in prison? See, this is what people don't get. You can't get it because it doesn't make any sense.
Peter, and then you got the case of Ashley Babbitt related to January on January 6th. The internal investigation.
My person of the year.
The internal investigation covers up for this guy.
Yes.
He says, which is clear, it's on video. I mean, there are two different angles. You can actually see his version of the story is just wrong. There's no like his version and their version. There is a version that is true. And he said he could not see her hands. He told the internal investigators. You can clearly see that his hands were in the window. Her hands were in the window, holding herself in the window. There was no way she could have had it. She's like, I didn't know whether she had a firearm or not. That is ludicrous. And then it doesn't matter because the internal investigation buries it. A month later, an independent one comes out and basically calls him a liar and says he murdered her. Nothing happens. So, nothing happens.
She had a third arm? Is that what you're trying to convince me? She had 3 arms?
Meanwhile, the city burns to the ground because the media lies to America and tells them that this poor 18-year-old kid just got shot while he had his hands up and he said, don't shoot. I mean, in reality, he was trying to take the firearm, George, off of Darren Wilson and use it against him.
And I'd say also, on a slightly different level, look at this interminable investigation of the Alec Baldwin case. I mean, we kind of know. I mean, we know what happened. I mean, all the people have been interviewed. It must all have been, it's all on camera and everything, and they're still investigating. I mean, what are they? I mean, Baldwin is now feeling very confident of himself. He's doing all these interviews. He's popping up here and there. He knows they're not going to bring any criminal charges against him. I mean, it's already just simply prima facie he is culpable. I think criminally of negligence. I mean,
of course,
because
guys, we would
civilly in a civil case.
No, let George finish. I cut him off.
I mean, we already had what's that, Clooney. I mean, Clooney. I mean, who's also kind of a Hollywood liberal icon. Pretty much threw Baldwin under the bus. He said, "Look, I mean, that's not what you do with a gun when you're on a movie set. You have to go through a whole procedure." So his story, he was just pulling the, he was just cocking the revolver, and then he just went off. All of that is just simply irrelevant. He didn't check himself, which he's supposed to, and he didn't. And so, at the very least, there is criminal culpability about on the ground of negligence. And yet, they're just investigating. In other words, they're trying to find some way, some justification for not bringing any charges against him.
George, George, you know what's going to happen? We lost the gun.
No, I think I said that.
It was some kind of transfer, custody.
That's it.
Gone.
Yeah. Gone. That's it.
And you know what I smell, guys? I smell an attempt to blame the gun manufacturers. And they're gonna be, because they've been trying to get them for years, right? Civil juries, however they could do it. They want gun manufacturers liable. All right. And the funniest part about this is that you have simpletons like The View, all right, actually saying that it's our fault for asking questions, that we're basically bothering Alec Baldwin because he's on vacation.
Yeah.
Do you believe these twits?
Yeah, and
you know what? Tell the judge you're on vacation the next time. You're
the woman he shot. And the woman that was shot, and be careful, the woman that was shot will never go on vacation again.
That's right. And he was with his kids on vacation. Exactly. She'll never go on vacation again. She'll never hold her kids again. So sorry for inconveniencing Alec Baldwin in the middle of his investigation. And honestly, this is a big problem in America. There are just too many people who have opinions on things. Alec Baldwin is one of them. Just days before, he was Mr. Not just being anti-gun, but Mr. educating people on it. I mean, this is just days ago. That's why I think that's probably really why he deleted his Twitter account, because there were so many stupid things he had said just in the days leading up to that shooting. But you don't, he said, I would never point a firearm at someone and pull the trigger. The first part of the sentence is every gun owner, any responsible gun owner, anyone who's taken a self-defense course, whatever, you just don't point weapons at people unless you intend to really use them. Forget about pulling the trigger or squeezing. Actually, Alec, it's not pulling, it's squeezing.
I think Jesse Smollett will be a character witness for Alex Baldwin. Okay, I see this coming.
Oh, God.
He'll vouch for him. Okay.
Yes.
It's just not possible. What he's claiming is not possible.
Right.
And everyone, including George Clooney, knows it. There is no way that firearm just went off. It's not like a Glock where the triggers, it's a safety trigger, and maybe on accident, you kind of like, you depressed it just a little bit too much, not fully, but too much. It was a little bit. That's not possible with the weapon he is well, not accused, he used. You didn't cock the hammer back and pull like, Wild West style kind of thing. It is not physically possible what he is asking us all to believe. And I saw Laura before say, when you were talking, George, he said you missed it. He blamed her.
Yes, he did.
I mean,
he did blame her. Yeah. That's exactly what he did. Yeah. Well, she was telling me this. She was low. He was just blaming her. I mean, he was blaming just about everybody. I mean, on the set. He himself is blameless. I mean, he was even asked by Stephanopoulos. Do you blame yourself for anything? No, I don't. Well, it's everybody else's fault.
Well, then who did? Who did shoot her? Okay, does anybody want to know that answer?
Yeah.
And also, with the media twist, I just want to go back and answer this. Somebody had said when we were talking about the media thing, well, as Tucker talks about the great replacement, is anything that happens, is he responsible for? Well, and I would answer this. First of all, I know of no mass shootings against illegal immigrants. If you know of one, bring them up. I hear plenty of reports about crime committed by illegal immigrants against legal U.S. citizens and residents that really should never have had that threat here to begin with, because they should not be here illegally. But number two, that man was lied to about events that did not happen. You understand the difference? They fabricated the Russia hoax, man. Get your head out of your butt. They fabricated it. Illegal immigration is real.
Yes.
Some people, I don't know, guys. I can't abide, but I just can't. I mean, wow.
Richard, because George and I have talked about this at great length. I mean, replacement theory. Oh, that means you're a xenophobe and you're a nativist.
Yeah.
It was Democrats that invented the theory because they like it. Okay. Yes. They're the ones. George, this is in the late 80s, early 90s, they started articulating this. And then replacement.
Yeah, but you could certainly say that it goes right back to the 1965 Immigration Act. I mean, that I think was always a Democrat idea to bring immigrants in from the third world. Previously immigration policy had been very European oriented, and they wanted to bring in people they thought would vote for Democrats, and generally that is what happened. I mean, they started bringing in people who tended to vote Democrats. And that's it. And they Democrats can admit it. Hey, we're bringing in new people. They're voting for us. Goodbye, white America. That's the GOP base. We've created a new base. They say it themselves, and then suddenly, Tucker Carlson says, well, that's racist. That's xenophobic.
The late great Democratic pollster Pat Goodell. He said years ago, I had spoken with him about this, and he had said, if you were around in the 80s, you were in, my age in the 80s, then you would have seen what, firsthand, like going to the 65 Act. A lot of people like Ted Kennedy did not think went far enough. And Ted Kennedy, the lion of the Senate, had argued for years that you should basically replace white people with immigrants, right? And that's what he had argued. And a lot of his moderate Democratic friends didn't like it. He did not like, they didn't like that talk. They weren't about it. Pat said definitely the smacking in 1980 woke a lot of those moderates up. They didn't believe that Ronald Reagan or any Republican candidate for that matter could beat a Democrat like that, like badly, like, 2 states, maybe they would get crushed like that. And then that had already, had alerted them that we need to maybe think about, they started to believe that white voters, even Democrats, weren't trustworthy. And then in 1984 with Mondale, that confirmed it, according to, and by the way, who polled for Walter Mondale. So I believe him 100%. So, he that was him, for those who don't know who I'm talking about. And he basically said after that, a lot of Democrats, almost overnight started to subscribe to that idea of replacement, right? They just simply believed that white people were too had gone too far in political maturation, and you needed an underclass, and preferably an immigrant underclass, to ensure that they don't get really destroyed in the manner that they got destroyed. It was bad, guys. I mean, Minnesota and DC, that's it. Everything else was red. That is really the moment.
That was the impetus for the 1965 Act, because the Democrats, they loved, FDR, he won 4 terms, and then Truman won. And then they suddenly, the electorate was changing. Eisenhower, won overwhelmingly. Nixon almost certainly won in 1960. I think the Democrats realized that, the great days of the FDR landslides have gone, and the Democrats needed to create a brand new electorate, and that was, I think, the impetus behind the 65 Act.
Yeah, but
his
also,
words were trust, which is what stuck with me. His words were, they came to the conclusion they could not trust white voters. What does that even mean? But that's the words,
There's also a class issue involved here, because if we look at
definitely.
We look at the New Deal. The New Deal goes all the way basically up to Reagan. Okay. And and it's the success of the New Deal in a way, because what happened is that what we defined as the working class changed very much. We went from blue collar to a lot more white collar. So we have a working class that is very elastic, and a lot of people, their parents suffered during the Depression. Maybe they themselves did, and because of the economic growth, people started identifying with other elites. I'm no longer a factory worker. I went to university, and these attitudes were changing. And so it's how the demographics changed, more education, more sophisticated work, and things like that. And people started identifying much more with Eisenhower Republicanism, because that for them that was a sign of success. So the class dynamic changed a lot. It's very hard for people to understand what working people meant, like in the 30s, 40s, and early 50s. Okay, it's very different now. What does it mean to be a working person? It's very different than it was then. And I think people's values change. George, that probably explains the Reagan victories. Okay, because people identified with those set of values. I mean, they may still be working class, but a very different working class from the 20s and 30s.
Which begs the question, George, even though that's not using that term in the right way. I know everyone does it. But, it does, our demographics destiny still. If that may be why we see more of a class divide now, and they push more of a class divide. Of course, they use the race card all the time. Rittenhouse, perfect example, right? They still use it, but it's like they've acknowledged that it's not as effective as it once was. And look at places like South Florida. Look at places like South and Western Texas. Look at places like Nevada and Arizona. Nevada is still competitive. Arizona is not a blue state. It's a purple state. But it wouldn't be if it wasn't for an influx of working class people from California and other areas, and working Hispanics. If it wasn't for them, those states would not have been that close, guys. It was the working Southern Hispanic that blew Biden out of Texas, not the white Anglo voter, as they call them. That's not what happened. It begs the question.
Yeah, I really do think that. And I think what has happened is, and this is a movement that started in the 60s, is that what we now think of as the left is minorities plus a particular kind of affluent elite, corporate, Silicon Valley, and so on. It's that's the sort of the coalition, and that is why they like identity politics. They don't want to raise all sorts of issues about raising taxation, hitting corporations, and so on. So I think there is that like class dynamic, and it's there for the Republicans to see. I mean, it's there. It's there to take it, because that combination of minority grievances plus a kind of elitist snobbery. It's not an attractive one, and I think that kind of explains why Biden's numbers are in the toilet. I mean, it's just no one wants this package.
I mean, George, if you look at all of these $1 trillion bills that are going through, I mean, Fox News goes way over the top on it sometimes. I mean, if you take Bernie as the gold standard, I mean, they've clawed away almost everything Bernie wanted, and so what do you get?
Yep.
What you get is no taxes for our rich, okay? And then you have an underclass that you want to keep an underclass because they're the most loyal voters, but you don't want to put in the things that are going to help your political opponents, people in the red states, okay? This is very maniacal here, because it is a party of the super wealthy, I mean, amazingly wealthy, and a lot of poor people. That's their coalition, because because of the culture wars. They think they have the advantage, but at the end of the day, they don't. Republicans have no idea how to deal with it. They're a bunch of boneheads, okay? But it really turns a lot of people off, okay? And people are turning away from it. So, I mean, for me, we've said this so many times, and it really frustrates me that there's such an open lane for conservatives to embrace, but they just don't have the capacity to think. Okay, and as George and I lament on the Gaggle all the time, is that if they just react to things, they just react. I would just say, I'm not talking about your nonsense anymore. I want to talk about how to help hardworking middle-class people. You can talk about Dr. Zeus on another channel. I'm not interested anymore.
Honestly, I mean, Peter, we were talking about this when I was on the Gaggle with you guys a couple of weeks ago. The congressional leadership has to change. And it's with McConnell, there's a lot of incompetence, and then there's a lot on the Republican side, and there's a lot of this. I believe everything the media tells me. I'm basically a coward, right? And they believe all the media polls, and they kowtow to their narrative. They react, like Peter was just saying. But when it comes to McConnell, like, he just screwed over his own conference, right? And made a deal with Schumer to basically waive the filibuster for the debt ceiling. This is a corrupt man. So this is not going to happen until Republicans replace people like him. And he's going to try to hand off the ball to John Thune, who will do his bidding similarly. But China, we were talking about China before. You want to know who's got wrapped around his pig? It's China. I mean, this is he never wanted to get in front of the camera and say, stop using Vladimir Putin as a boogeyman, because the real problem is China, because those are his buddies. So it's more than just
his wife. His wife. I mean, she's the daughter of a very wealthy Chinese guy. So it goes right. It's very intimate with him, with the Chinese.
And that's what I'm saying. Like, you would agree that, I mean, that coalition is there for Republicans to take, but they can't do it if they have their leaders continuing to screw these people over.
Right. Yeah. No, that's right. I mean, and that's really is a problem. I mean, and that here you have a Republican Party that is essentially you have wants to be a working class party. Wants to represent working class, middle class people, but you do have a congressional leadership that it wants to keep the Republican Party as the appendage of the corporations. I mean, that's their instinct. Corporate tax cuts. What do you want to do? Let's have more tax cuts. Let's have more deregulation, and they don't want to do anything at all that actually would help ordinary people. I mean, and this has been going on for a time. I mean, look, Nixon, I think, did kind of build that kind of a coalition, which was the new kind of majority. But I think the Democrats were panicked by Nixon's overwhelming victory, and they seized on Watergate and they ran with it. And Reagan, unfortunately, I think he also had an opening, but didn't really didn't make the most of it. He did pursue policies that were against labor. He should have seen, hey, these are my allies.
Yeah.
But instead, went down again the mainstream Republican of being against organized labor.
In a way, Reagan, he actually goes. He went culture wars, okay, as a substitute, I think, in that.
But can't you walk and chew gum though, Peter? Can't
you should
walk
be
and
able
chew gum
to
at the same time?
I think
look at
that's rationality. Okay, that is rationality. But what we're doing, we're always being forced to choose one or the other, and GOP just caves. They just don't know what to say. I mean, these segments I saw. I think it was on Tucker and Laura. I mean, on men pretending to be women in women's sports. Okay, I mean, I'm not even interested in getting a discussion with somebody about that. It's just stupid. Okay, it's dumb and it doesn't make any sense. I don't know why we have to talk about it. The moon is not made of cheese. I don't want to get into a conversation about is the moon made of cheese. It's a waste of time. It's wrong. Okay. And people have to start standing up and saying it. Okay. I mean,
and they cower. But they cower.
I mean,
but they cower.
You're telling me people don't have the courage to say what you're saying is wrong. It's not true. Okay. There are two genders. That's it. Okay. Why does it take courage to say that? That's really sad.
But that's the thing. In fact, what Tucker had said yesterday about that man who won the swimming contest, he beat the woman by 38 seconds or some absolutely insane number. I mean, it's just but I think that is an issue that Republicans can run on. I mean, parents are angry. I mean, their daughters are humiliated and say, what, they have no say in the fact that their daughter has to share changes with boys. I mean, you're not allowed to complain about that. So I think that's a legitimate issue.
And we saw this where an example of where they didn't cower. Finally, I think a big part of that was lieutenant governor in that race, but because she was just she's a fighter, But in Virginia, it's kind of like the Youngkin team did a good job staying on message, really, and driving that conversation. We polled Virginia, that multiple times throughout the course, very much in line with what we found nationally when it came to the transgender issue. And especially when you're talking about competing for, like you said, these parents were just furious over the idea that they have a daughter who could be humiliated and all of her hard work go down the drain for this culture war, Peter, that they won't fight, and so when you seize it and when you say, you know what, I'm going to pull a DeSantis, I'm going to pull a Youngkin, and I'm going to fight this fight. I'm going to have this battle. You win. Look, it's very simple. The other one was the Confederate monuments. They cowered on that, Peter. And now look, that statue of Robert E. Lee is going to be melted down. Only Donald Trump had the courage at that time to say, cut the crap with the museums. They're not going in the museums. You're going to destroy them. And next will be Thomas Jefferson. That's what he said. And he was right. It's in the New York Times today. They're going to melt that statue down.
Yes. Yeah.
Even though the exit polls showed that the people overwhelmingly, the exit polls showed it. The exit polls asked voters, do you support keeping them or removing them? It wasn't even close.
Gentlemen, transgenderism isn't even a thing. It's a lifestyle choice. Why do you call it transgenderism? See, you're allowing a discursive entry here. No,
you know what?
It's a lifestyle choice that you make.
On that.
That's your business.
I do.
Okay.
Yeah.
Your lifestyle choice should not impinge upon the rights of other people. Okay. So it's not even a category. It's an invented discursive category.
And it's funny, Peter, all of the literature pre-2014, decades of studies on this from Johns Hopkins decades of it. And all of a sudden, which all refer to it, as you just said, really, I mean, it was an invented even mental disorder. That's what they called it at Johns Hopkins. That all changed a few years ago. And now, of course, staffing is differently. And they're going to conduct these studies that show. And Tucker, speaking of which, he's been brought up a couple of times. He's the only one who has had the fortitude to go into the data and, you know, like Asa Hutchinson, who's a Republican, by the way, caved to that bill about chemical castration of minors. And he went through the information that we've gone through it ourselves. It is not at all. There is no evidence to support that allowing this behavior, this lifestyle, helps your mental fitness is the point. Now, maybe we'll find something in the future. But as far as right now, what 40 years worth of research has shown, Peter's right. Peter is right. And,
Right.
you know, helping a child identify as another gender did not lead to happiness.
Right. But here you have boys. So here's a boy. Hey, well, I can't win races against other boys. So I think I'll go and switch over and compete against girls. And whoa, I won. I won the medal. There's something wrong with that picture.
Well,
And Alan West got in a lot of trouble for saying that gender neutral bathrooms would lead to sexual assaults. And wouldn't you know it, that's what was at the top of the minds of voters in Loudoun County, which swung double digits to Republicans because there was a sexual assault, which they tried to cover up, which led to another incident because that student was just moved. I mean, it's just incredible. So they put, like Peter used, ideologically possessed. They put their ideology above the safety of children.
That's right.
And that sexual assault occurred. Both.
You guys remember, what was it? It was a few weeks ago. I mean, there was a quote unquote trans person, a man that desires to be live as a woman, and she was I think it's at the Pentagon. She's like a rear admiral or something like that, and all through the media.
Oh, okay.
A victory for women. He's a man. It's not a victory for women. What are you talking about? This is this discursive category I'm talking about here. You're saying, you're telling me not to believe my eyes. You're telling me to say a negative is a positive and a positive is a negative. You really? Okay. This all started when George and I were coming up. It used to be gold, silver, bronze. That's what it was. And then suddenly you get a ribbon for being 13th.
Everyone got a trophy.
Everybody
gets a trophy.
You lost. And then you get a ribbon for just being there. You lost. Right. You didn't compete. You didn't win. And one thing I will never get over, gentlemen, and it is something that's engraved in stone for me, a boy that wants to beat a girl because he's a guy and she's a girl. That's a place I cannot go. I can't go there. That's cheating.
Well, Peter, isn't that where we're Peter? But listen to where this is all really headed. Because if we're going to use, like a civil rights predicate, right, which is what this is their goal. That's why we really included some really incredible stuff in that poll, which was the very final choice. Because I didn't want to taint the other questions. The final question we asked was that we gave them a scenario about so let's say a biological man who now identifies, because we didn't really use those words, we gave scenarios. So do you support or oppose the following? A biological man who now identifies as a female competing in, say, mixed martial arts or boxing, right? So because this is where it's headed. It's only logical. If
it's already happened. I think it's already happened. Exactly. A man competing against a woman, and lo and behold, the man won. He beat her.
What a shocker!
Yeah.
Shocker!
Yeah.
Shocker!
What a shock! I mean, you have to be prepared if you're going to champion this. If you're going to pretend to be some kind of virtuous, champion of civil rights for I can't even count anymore, the LGBTQ whatever hyphen everything else. Now, if you're going to phrase it like that. And I know a lot of, by the way, I know a lot of, two that are very close to me, a lot of gay men who don't like this. They feel like this is a different category. Like Peter's shaking his head, so you probably know some too. I mean, they're appalled to be put into the same. They don't like it at all. You have to be ready if you're going to be Mr. and Mrs. Virtuous on this issue. You have to be ready to watch a biological man beat a woman's face in. Is that what we meant by women's rights? Is this what we meant by equality? Because that's going to happen. I mean, look, there's no other. It is a what's the term? It's like a snowball, but a slippery slope. It is. Because if you're going to argue this as a civil rights issue, then that is, guys, that's where it's going. There will be no logical argument against allowing a man to fight a woman because he no longer identifies as a man.
George and I experienced this firsthand. Okay, when I was very, very young, girls sports hardly existed. And then it was something, we got to invest in the girls. We have to give them equal opportunity. And it slowly started building up. And then when I was at university many moons ago, there were a lot of young women that, they were on the lacrosse team, the swimming team. It was, they came from a poor family. This was their bread ticket. They were going to make it. Okay. I mean, sports, very important for a lot of these young women. And fanatics about it. And there's a myth out there, jocks are dumb. No, the best athletes are very, very smart because they know how to discipline their time. They know how to discipline their life. They know what they want from a very early age. And then now you're telling them all your hard work, all of your hopes are dashed. What was it, George? 38 seconds?
38 seconds, that's right. But it's an interesting
I was in swimming. I came from
That's a ridiculous time.
I came from a swimming family. 2 seconds is a lot of time.
Yeah,
exactly.
Right.
But that's what's interesting is also that how cowardly people are, because again, this is a moment at which women athletes, women, athletes from the past should be speaking out and saying, hey, this is, if I had to compete against men, I wouldn't have won gold medals in the Olympics. I wouldn't have been, I wouldn't have won these tennis tournaments. I mean, in other words, I think Navratilova, I think she's spoken out about it, but none of the others have. I mean, it's like everyone is so timid, but, this is exactly, they have certain authority because they were professional women athletes. And so they know that that it would be ridiculous if they would have to compete against men. So that's a problem. I think there's a lot of cowardice around.
But why are we living in a time where cowardice is rewarded and courage is discouraged? Why are we in this situation? It takes courage to say that that's a man, not a woman. How did we get to this place?
Right.
Peter, that's funny. That's funny you said that. I was on Twitter the other day. It was when Mississippi was being heard in front of the Supreme Court, and all the abortionists went nuts because it sounds like it's going down 6-3. Roe v. Wade is going down 6-3, or at least part of Roe is in trouble, it looks like. This guy who was, I've never heard of him, but I'd have to go back in my Twitter feed to find it. But he's an actor, and he said basically, where are all my fellow, my fellow men, which is I would not use that term to describe these people. All right. Where are all my fellow men to help defend a woman's right to abortion? Where are all my fellow men who were able to avoid fatherhood? Why don't they defend a woman's? Why are their voices so silent? Because they wanted, they definitely should be helping women, maintain Roe because they were able to avoid fatherhood that they didn't want.
Courage.
This was like
Courage.
father of 3
But
children.
that's a classic because after all, who would be in favor of abortion most of all? Well, men. They can they can have sex without any consequence. Of course, men would love it. Yeah, right on. Let's have more abortion on demand. Because it's great for men, not so great for women.
And I'll tell you what, though, guys, I mean, it really does show you that what you just said, Peter, is 100% true. So that's promoting being a coward. And I even quote tweeted him and I said, yeah, all right, deadbeat dads, would-be deadbeat dads of the world, unite. Yeah, that's a great message. You know, so I mean, as a father of 3 kids, it takes a man to raise the children. It takes little boys run from their responsibilities. You know, that so, and also that tweet really did show you that abortion is used as it's not supposed to be used. But it's used, and as the media tells you, it's not used as birth control, as a form of birth control. This idea that rape and incest is like a real, relevant to the topic is ridiculous. That is a tiny, infinitesimal, tiny percentage of the abortions committed in this country every year. Most of them are simply dubbed as unwanted pregnancies that they get, that they weren't responsible. They did not practice safe, sex. It's there's no other way to put it. I mean, it's not a pleasant thing to talk about, but you were irresponsible. And you did, if you're a guy, you didn't do what you needed to do. If you're a girl, you did.
See, being irresponsible is considered a virtue now. Okay, everything is getting inverted.
And here it is. I found it. Here it is. I found it. Go ahead. Though. It's inverted.
And plus, this is a complete frontal assault against family. These people don't like families. Okay, they want people to be isolated. They want people to be dependent and not to be held responsible for their behavior. This is called end of civilization. This is what this is called.
Right.
This is what I love about the people who follow me, because this guy just put it as clear as he possibly could. I was trying to be, what's the word? I was trying to be here. I'll first go to broke ass Stewart, who I never heard of and don't know why he has a check mark. He's got 28,000 followers. Oh, he was a mayoral candidate and now is a TV host from BuzzFeed. And he says, or writes to some part-time for BuzzFeed. That's probably how he got the blue check, even though he doesn't really deserve it. I'm not hearing enough from dudes who were saved from an unwanted fatherhood because their partner was able to have an abortion. Fellas, we should be shouting as loud as our partners, mothers, sisters, and friends right now. That is one sick dude. And then I quote tweeted him back and I said, would be deadbeat dads of America unite. But the bottom line is, this advocates using abortion as a form of birth control, which is how it is practiced in reality, but rarely admitted because it is offensive to us as a society. And then this guy flatly said what I was trying to say nicely. But I mean, look, maybe we're all coming up different, but I was told by my father, by men in my life, you don't want to be a dad, do what you got to do to make sure. And this guy, I'm not going to read it, but he said if he didn't want to be a father, he shouldn't have. But that is the fact of it. You're not responsible for your actions. So as I got older, I guess I became more pro-life. I was decidedly pro-choice when I was younger, but then you learn. And
me too. I'll be honest, I felt the same way.
And then I saw my son on a sonogram, Peter. And that was it.
The thing is that we're aware of it, painfully aware of it, acutely aware of it today. But particularly when George and I were brought up, it was just a ideology that was imparted upon us. There was no debate. There was no question. You're brought up to be liberal. That's what the state does. That's what their mission is. And then you become I realize now, living abroad for so long, that just about everything in my education was a lie and a fraud. Okay. What a waste of time. Maybe because of that, I know the truth now, or how I understand the truth. Okay. But it took a long time to get there. It took a long time. It wasn't easy.
Go ahead. Let me just to change the subject, before we finish. I wanted to ask you, Richard, what do you make of this sudden rift that has emerged between Trump and Bannon on the subject of Purdue in Georgia? Because Trump endorsed Purdue as soon as he announced his candidacy, and Bannon and Navarro have spoken out very strongly against Purdue. What do you make of this?
Sometimes Donald Trump makes some really bad decisions. I have to be honest. I side with Bannon on this.
I agree.
Vernon Jones had some stuff in his history that I'm not really comfortable talking in depth about because I just don't think it has a lot of, I don't, it's one of those things where you really don't know the truth. Some of it was civil too. So someone accuses you. He was accused first of trying to, remove white people from DeKalb County, wherever he was a supervisor, or Cobb, whatever it was. I think it's DeKalb. But the bottom line is, it's like civil things, civil cases can be filled with a lot of ridiculous accusations that aren't true. There was never any like criminal investigation to ferret out the truth. And then the other thing was that he had a threesome, right? So I don't really give a damn about, and neither do the voters. I mean, the fact of the matter is, I saw some people criticize him for it, and I just chuckling, like, because by looks of these people, you just look jealous to me that you couldn't get two women at once. Like, this is the way this guy looked to me. It wasn't like a serious Christian appalled by him having a threesome with two women. He just looked like a jealous idiot. But Trump was concerned about some of the stuff that he had heard with Vernon Jones. Kemp is more important to Trump. Like, to see Kemp get removed is more important than supporting or not supporting Purdue. So I don't think what Trump knows, though, is what Team Purdue did to people who were trying to help Trump's effort in Georgia. I'm not entirely sure that he's aware of how Purdue's people abandoned his campaign and just ran away, like took McConnell's side 100%. And there were a few of us, Robert Barnes, myself, trying to tell people, I don't know why you're talking about a runoff. There is no runoff. This is about the recount. If you lose that, you're going to lose the runoff. The runoff is the recount, idiots. You're not paying attention. And we were polling it, and I was showing people Southern and Central Georgia was dead. We were giving them recordings, type things. People were very clear. I am tired of holding my nose and voting for people that are cowards who will not stand up to defend me or my president when the time comes. Like, when the shots are fired, they run from the fight, and that's what happened. They lost 300,000, Trump voters in Georgia. That's why both of them were defeated in the January 5th runoffs. Right. But I think it's more important because Purdue can win. He can. Unlike Brian Kemp is going to lose. So here's what I told Bannon, and it's true. I mean, Bannon, I get why he's pissed. I mean, Vernon Jones is the fighter for this thing. He is. But Trump was concerned about his past. Brian Kemp is a sure loser, though. I'm telling everybody this because I am 100% confident. We polled Georgia several times since the election, including one on these primaries and the governor's elections. Brian Kemp's approval is +6, but it's only +6 because of the number of Democrats who say they approve of him. And that is because they're looking at him as someone who stuck his thumb in Trump's eye. Right. But when they get their own candidate, they're not going to vote for him. Right. They will go and vote for their Democratic nominee, and he will be left with his real approval, which is really like 41%. That's it. And he'll get crushed. He will lose because there are too many Republicans. About a quarter of the Republican Party will probably leave the governor's thing blank. People think I'm joking or being like, hyperbolic. I am not. They will not vote for Brian Kemp. He will not get their vote. It's simple. They will. It's not cutting off their nose to spite their face, because they have come to the conclusion that Kemp is basically a Democrat anyway. So what the hell is that? There is no difference. He's not going to get my vote. I'm not going to be the sucker here. That's it.
If we can finish up on one more question, and I think George's question is really, really good. But if we could, that was a great one. Yeah. If we could broaden it out, how judicious should Trump be in backing candidates? I mean, should he go all in, or should he have a much softer touch? What do you think?
Yeah, I absolutely argue that he should target certain races and certain issues and get involved there. Like, he was nowhere when Georgia was having their battle over election reform. He was the most popular, most powerful Republican politician when Republicans' #1 issue at that time was election reform. So where the hell were you, Donald? Where were you? And the bill did not get passed as it should have been passed, or would have been and is supported by Georgians overall. I would argue he needs to, if he wants to go after these people and voted for impeachment, I would too if I was him, frankly. I mean, that's just who I am. I'm not going to let them slide. But I would pick my battles and pick my endorsements wisely, because your score really does matter. And also, you'll dilute the value of your endorsement if you keep just throwing them around like crazy. You know, didn't you learn anything from endorsing Mitch McConnell?
Yeah, that's right. But that's the thing. I mean, Purdue lost that race. I mean, Trump gets blamed for what happened in that runoff in Georgia, but the fact is that Purdue was slumping in the polls. I mean, when November the 3rd and January the 5th, he and the other woman, they kept slipping in the polls. So, you know, Trump gets blamed. Oh, it was all Trump's fault that they lost. But no, also, you know, it was all Trump's fault. Why did they? The reason they were slipping in the polls is that they weren't going to fight for anything. They weren't going to fight. They certainly weren't going to fight for Trump. But they weren't even going to fight on the issue of election integrity in Georgia. So why waste your vote on them?
What those
I
two?
tell people Mitch McConnell lost those races.
Those two were so pathetic. So pathetic.
And they were. I mean, Peter, you got two people in that are basically, and now we're going to have Purdue come back, and this is going to be an issue. We have two people who were accused of insider trading. That's number one. That is a death knell to a candidate in today's, especially when you're supposed to be the party of the populist. I mean, hello. All right, that's number one. But number two, Mitch McConnell, I say, is the one who lost that race. I say Democrats didn't win it. Republicans lost it, and nobody did more than Mitch McConnell. The payments, Robert Cahaley of the Trafalgar Group, the pollster, is right. The payments that McConnell opposed, you know, they're basically free money to people who are struggling. They were very popular, and people in Georgia wanted them. We polled it, and they were pissed, you know, at McConnell for not doing it. So they associated McConnell with them. They're Republicans. And then, two, the Republicans were angry because McConnell convinced Team Purdue to walk away. They were told they would do better with Trump off the ballot. In reality, and like George, like you said, everyone blames Trump, but Donald Trump did better in the Atlanta metro suburbs than David Perdue did in his runoff. Take a look at it, folks. He underperformed Donald Trump in the ATL metro area. So, I mean, and I love people like Guy Benson who argue with you, you know, or with your argument for a month, only to 2 weeks after the election say, you know, I'm looking at it, and I think it's pretty clear. Republicans, for some reason, just didn't come out and vote. Are you an idiot, man? Are you a simpleton idiot? I mean, it was so clear. And I would go over this with my viewers. We would pull out the poll, go region by region, and I would say I think I at the time was saying about 200,000 shy. In central Georgia, they're going to be 200,000 shy of Trump voters. I mean, all the way from central Georgia to south of Savannah. They were just, you know, they screwed it up, man. They bit the bullet, guys. I mean,
it's not just Guy Benson. I mean, it's people like Ann Coulter. I mean, Ann Coulter, you know, they're still
sorry.
Constantly. No, it was Trump who lost it because Trump said your vote is wasted, and I keep repeating this over and over again. But it wasn't about your vote is wasted because they were slipping in the polls, you know, going into that runoff. Right. So it was nothing to do with Trump saying your vote is wasted.
That's right, George. And it wasn't from her. Even if the general sense of what she was saying was true, that's not what people were telling us. People who told us their vote was wasted, although I did yell at people like Lynn Wood for saying, you know, stop with the rigged. It's rigged no matter what, because that helps the left oppress the right. But that's not why they were saying their vote was wasted. They were saying their vote was wasted because Perdue and Loeffler were worthless and were not helping you know, defend them. And that is all they wanted was and that's why they wanted and loved Donald Trump so much, because with all of his ugly, he defended them. And that is so rare. All these people wanted was somebody to defend them, and they will defend him and, you know, until they're, you know, dying breath in exchange for his loyalty. And they can't see that. I don't know. You know who did? The great late Rush Limbaugh. He saw it crystal clear. He knew it. He understood that relationship. And Mitch McConnell is too corrupt and too stupid to understand that.
These people just don't understand politics. All they understand is their interests, and their interests are not ours.
That is so true. That is a great way to put it. And the same goes for their commentators, like Guy Benson and others. So, I mean, his interest is, keeping his little post as Fox News guy, as a contributor, in a town hall. He's not interested in telling the truth. Unfortunately, somebody from town hall did come about 2 weeks later and asked me for a couple of quotes, and I'm like, whatever, I mean, I can't do this with you people anymore. I just can't, but now it does look like they've, at least come around on the priorities of Republican voters, because somebody came to me with Virginia and basically, wanted insight. So that, maybe that shows at least some sign, guys, that they're learning. But I imagine overall they're not. I mean, we see it day in and day out, and they just don't get it. They don't get it.
The thing that I worry about a lot is that the disenchantment and growing dislike of Biden is what the Republicans are going to run on, and I think that's a failure. You have to have an agenda that is positive. Okay, saying Joe is limited capacity, slow Joe, nappy Joe. That's counterproductive, because that's not political. Okay, be political, because people are thirsty for that. Okay,
it's petty.
All they do is they just slice and dice everything. Slice and dice this and that, but it doesn't mean anything in its totality. Okay. People want more answers. They want an agenda. They want to know the country's going in the right direction. But if they keep slicing and dicing all these things here, they muddle everything. The Republicans will do very, very well. But when they get what they want, we go back to revert. This George says it all the time. Once they get power, they have no idea what to do with it.
Right. But just going back on Georgia, who will win? Will Purdue beat Kemp in the primary?
Yeah, probably. I'd like to poll it again. I would really love to do that, and I think the Georgia Record is probably going to commission that poll for me to do, because the last one we did was for the Georgia Record, which is owned by Creative Destruction. I was telling you about the other day, but that's their local paper. Kemp was winning the primary, and by handily. When we did it, Vernon Jones was very far behind. But Vernon did pull ahead when we gave them the choice of whether or not Donald Trump endorsed so-and-so. Brian Kemp really did not gain that much. There were a few diehard people who said, okay, if Trump endorses him, I'll do it. But for the most part, the Trump voter really wasn't moved that much. When told that Trump would endorse Vernon Jones, then Vernon Jones, I mean, it was roughly Trump's endorsement is good for roughly 50 points in a Republican primary in Georgia. It was astounding. It was a net 50-point swing. Then it put Vernon ahead of Kemp. So now that Purdue has it, I suspect it'll probably beat Kemp. I'd have to poll it though and see. But Kemp is deeply, deeply, deeply unpopular among Republicans. A quarter of them strongly disapprove. So that you just can't win a general election with at least a quarter of your base hating your guts. You just can't, guys. It's mathematically impossible. It really is. So yeah, that's it. That's a good question. I'm sure they're going to do it. Keep your fingers crossed that we get that commission and do it. I'd be very, very, interested to see. And I'm sure Robert Cahaley will do it at Trafalgar. He's Kemp's pollster.
Right. That's
what I heard.
Yeah, I like Vernon Jones. I mean, I didn't know this about his past, but I've watched him on Bannon's show, and he always seems very articulate, I think also very likable. But so I didn't understand why Trump wouldn't endorse him. So I guess
guys, we're 2 hours and 15 minutes or so. I have to get ready.
Yeah, you ready?
I have to get ready for crosstalk tomorrow.
That's cool. Right. Laura's definitely telling me to wrap too. But as always, guys, tell people where they can find you. It was another great conversation.
I got one more question. Ask Laura, your lovely wife, can we have you back on crosstalk soon?
Oh, she's gonna tell you yes. I told her I loved it, and she was like, "All right, I'll book it the next time he asks." Because I was like, "Damn, that was fun." I like crosstalk a lot, Peter. I'm all in.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you so much. It was a great discussion.
Tell people where they, Tell people where they can check you guys out real quick before you go. I mean, I know, but I'll let you do it.
Locals.com.
It is. All right,
And
all the best, guys. Okay.
and crosstalk and crosstalk also.
Yeah, cross-talk.
Yeah,
And
it's a
then
good
next
show.
time, Richard, you're going to be our guest, so that's going to be in a couple of weeks. So really looking forward to resuming our discussion, which is always fascinating. So thank you.
Absolutely, Peter. As always, guys, we'll talk to you soon. Okay.
Take care.
Take care, guys.
Bye-bye.
You could check out Peter and George at thegaggle.locals.com. All right. I'm going to roll out of here. I hope that was another productive conversation. I love the conversations with these guys. I really do. I do their show once a month. They do Inside the Numbers once a month. And it's always good. There's not enough time. Never has there been a lack of content or conversation. It's great. But yeah, I'm going to peel out of here. Check out I'm sure Laura put it in the comment section already. If she didn't, check out the public polling project for December or whatever. I mean, I put up that amount, but I didn't expect it to get fully funded. The other one wasn't for fall. If we could get fall almost, like a roughly even, then I'll feel good to do it. But yeah, but check it out. Share it far and wide. As always, you can follow me at locals, my locals page, peoplespundit.locals.com, on Getter at People's Pundit, on Twitter at Peoples_Pundit. And if you like this show, you're watching on YouTube, hit the thumbs up button, subscribe, hit the notification bell. That'll let you know when we're going to go live. And on Rumble, give it that little plus sign, and you could just subscribe on Rumble as well. That'll let you know when we're going to go live as well. All right. Locals, see you soon. Everyone else, see you Friday on Freewheeling Friday. We'll have Don Smith. We'll have a lot of other goodies, all right? All right, I'm out of here. I'll talk to you soon. All the best.
How much you wanna bet that I can get you back inside your head before the summer ends and spread a little love. Just for a little fun, I'll make you come back to me before the rise of every sun. Baby, it's meant to be. I know you got a man, but he don't understand. You're gonna be a heartbreaker. You're such a love taker. So just suck me in and you can toss me like a cigarette. 'Cause I just wanna be a bad habit, yeah. Rhythm in our love, it's impressive, excessive. You can't make this stuff up. My chest beats, it's restless, wakes the neighbors up above. Yeah, baby, come and show me love. Baby, come and show me love. Because you're gonna be a heartbreaker. You're such a love taker. So just suck me in and you can toss me like a cigarette. 'Cause I just wanna be a bad habit, yeah.
We can get on a plane and take a one-way ride, steal us away to find a place we can hide. It wouldn't take much to disappear for a night, just to give in to the need and leave it all behind.
'Cause I know that you know that I know that you own me. You told me, now show me, come blow me away. 'Cause I know that you know that I know that you want me. You told me, now show me, come blow me away. You're gonna be a heartbreaker. You're such a love taker. So just suck me in and you can toss me like a cigarette. 'Cause I just wanna be a bad habit, yeah. You're gonna be a heartbreaker. You're such a love taker. So just suck me in and you can toss me like a cigarette. 'Cause I just wanna be a bad habit, yeah. Suck me in and you can toss me like a cigarette.